and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we'll be concentrating on some quick-fire quotes on the Ghost of Christmas Present, but first let's just remind ourselves of what this character does in Stave 3 of the novel A Christmas Carol. So, the Ghost of Christmas Present is the second spirit to visit Scrooge, and he's jolly and welcoming, the antithesis, the opposite of Scrooge. This spirit shows Scrooge visions of Christmas Day, conveying the message that family and generosity is worth far more than money. The spirit is honest, using Scrooge's own words against him when Scrooge asks if Tiny Tim will die. The spirit is both prophetic, predicting mankind, and Scrooge will suffer unless the lessons of generosity and tolerance are learnt. It's the allegorical deeper meanings that Dickens had intended here. It also presents two children to Scrooge, ignorance and want. They're both symbols of what happens to the poor when they're neglected by wealthy brothers and sisters in society. So simply put, Dickens' intention here is to share with the reader Scrooge's struggle with the notion of Christmas spirit and the extent to which he's isolated from others in his life that he should care about, be that in the world of Bob Cratchit and his family, his own nephew Fred, or broadly speaking for the poor that he ignored in Stave 1. So our first quote comes from the narrator. It's actually about Tiny Tim, and Scrooge is taken by the Ghost of Christmas Present to see how Tiny Tim reacts on Christmas Day. And it says, he hoped the people saw him in church and remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Well, straight away, the verb hoped implies rejoicing in the excitement of the Christmas spirit. And there we have it. It's as if Tiny Tim embodies all that's morally right about taking what's good even in difficult situations. Equally, language in this quote is littered with this semantic field of religious connection, be it church, Christmas Day, and who. We know that to mean God. It's as if Tiny Tim's faith is in God and others, in humanity. There's an interesting way that the word remember is noted here. The narrator is mirroring the sentiment that Tiny Tim has. He has hope in the future, unlike Scrooge. I think it's interesting that Dickens here uses a narrator who pays homage to Jesus. It echoes the sentiment found in Matthew 11. The blind receive sight, the lame walk. For a Victorian sort of reader, they would know that Bible reference and they'd be pretty impressed that it was woven into the story. They would understand the connection that Tiny Tim is the virtuous one. It's very clear to us as well that this is heightening how much Tiny Tim values what he has, and it exemplifies that Scrooge and maybe us as readers need to question how much weight we give to being wealthy, money and material wealth in general. Our next quote is from Fred, Scrooge's only living relative. And he says his offences carry their own punishment. He's amongst friends on Christmas Day. The use of the word offences amplifies how much rage Fred has at how his uncle chooses to behave. If that wasn't enough, the verb carry has burdens attached to it. It's as if Fred is highlighting here there are repercussions for Scrooge if he will not change. That's the overriding message that Scrooge has had from each spirit he's encountered, so it's interesting that a family member says it too. Equally, own punishment is frustration at the fixed mindset of his uncle, but also he knows that his uncle is unhappy. It's as if, he wishes he could say these things to his uncle. It's ironic though, isn't it? Because Fred shares freely amongst friends what he would never have dared said to his uncle when he encountered him to wish him well at Christmas in Stave 1. Our final quote is from the Ghost of Christmas Present himself. He introduces, "This boy is ignorance, this girl is want, beware of them both." The use of the nouns boy and girl may well be a character in this moment in the novel, but it's also a deeper representation of the forgotten, impoverished poor. They are both symbolic representations of those children left behind. The use of the abstract noun ignorance is important. Dickens believed very strongly that the poor should be educated to escape a cycle of poverty. I think that's why he's included that one. Well, that's obvious. Dickens wants to share here how damaging it is to allow the poor to remain hungry. The capitalisation of both of these abstract nouns makes it clear this has got a deeper meaning. It's not literal, it's allegorical, it's got layers of meaning. If that weren't enough, the imperative mood created around the word beware heightens how the Ghost of Christmas Present is seeking to raise Scrooge's understanding of his responsibility to others. Scrooge learns a lot in this chapter, but more importantly, he's educated by the ghost and reminded of his heartless words in Stave 1, when he says they'd better die and decrease the surplus population. The Ghost of Christmas Present is really blunt with Scrooge here. He does say if these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. That's a moment about Tiny Tim, but it hits hard for Scrooge.